Hey guys, how's it going? It certainly has been a while. And last week I uploaded an Ask Me Anything or Ask Me a Question post on my Instagram stories. And I thought to respond in the form of a video or reels later on. I will crop up multiple reels after this video has been recorded. And thinking about it, it reminded me of the times when I used to upload a lot of YouTube videos in the past and I've not been very consistent in doing that. And I think that that actually is very important, uploading YouTube videos, for me at least, because I think that it's a good opportunity for me. It's very good opportunities for me to think out loud, to potentially help someone as well if they are able to glean any lessons from what I share in uploading my videos. And that also reminds me of the videos, of the types of videos I used to upload when I was younger. And even though I cringe when I look at a lot of them, some of them are good though. I do rewatch some of them, and I I would say I like the messages that I share, and I would still rewatch them and think about how I could consolidate those messages when I shared when I was much younger. So I do plan to keep those videos up, including the ones that I find cringy, because I think it's a good opportunity for me to also to look at the growth, my own growth, and perhaps a few years from now, I would be able to think about what has influenced me, my growth, and so forth. Anyway, I put up the Ask Me Anything post on my Instagram stories, and I received some questions, not a lot. And one of the key questions I received was what I've learned starting a business. This year, in 2024, and at the time of recording, it is actually the 31st of December 2024, interestingly, aptly enough. I started my business at the end of August 2024, and it actually was my second attempt at starting a business. And I've actually learned a lot, and I am very grateful because I have a wonderful team. I have for this myself. There is my sister, who is the COO, and there's my friend and ex-teacher, Dr. Sullivan, who plays the role of the CDO, Chief Design Officer. And three of us run IdeaVid, which is a training and consulting firm. When I started the brand back in August, or at the end of August, so we might as well call it September, I really went through a lot of anxiety because I didn't know what was going to happen, and I had to be realistic as well. I technically recruited my business partners to be on this venture with me, which meant that they had to resign from their lucrative jobs, which placed upon me the responsibility of ensuring that there was constant revenue so that I was able to put food on the table for everyone. So, and I know that if the business were not to work out, as much as we like to think that we are close and we've known each other for a long time, it would sever relationships because financial responsibilities and financial concerns are more real than a lot of things in the world. Anyhow, coming back to the lesson that I've learned, and I thought, hey, there are actually a lot of lessons that I've been able to learn. And I actually brainstormed and I've uploaded 2 Substack newsletters right now on the lessons I've learned, each piece reflecting one lesson. I actually wanted to upload one full piece with all the lessons that I've learned, but the more I thought about it and when I actually started writing, I realized that in each of those lessons, there were sub-lessons as well. And so today, in this YouTube video, I would like to share the first lesson, and I would classify it as the most important lesson as well, because I learned about this lesson ever since I failed my first business venture back in 2023 at about June or July. And the most important business lesson I've learned can be encapsulated in one word, which is sell. To sell, I must sell. And selling is the most important thing in any business, based on my experience. Now, selling is very interesting. I think it would be more interesting if I share about the lesson I learned, the mistake I made when I started my first business venture. When I set up my first business, I had my sister as my partner as well, the same sister who is my current business partner. So I thank her for the trust and confidence. And I had one more partner who was in charge of the technical side of things. And we wanted to start an ed tech company, educational technology company. We wanted to start something like a software which would help employees and students enhance their speaking skills. We actually went through multiple bouts of prototypes, and the prototypes toward the very end especially were actually very good. They had been tested multiple times with a lot of my connections and friends and family members, and a lot of them gave very good feedback, but I did not dare to sell because I thought that it was insufficiently perfect. And I think that was the mistake that I made. I wanted to wait for perfection before I began the process of selling. I was talking with a number of potential leads, but when I did talk to them, I did more of user interviews, asking them about their work and trying to interpret and infer their pain points. I did everything except selling because I wanted the product to be perfect before I sold. I wanted to stay away from rejection as far as I could. And I think I was under the illusion that if the product was perfect, then I would not face any rejection, which obviously is absolutely false in the case of selling, because just like applying to jobs, most of the sales would result in rejections, especially and crucially at the infancy. I believe in most businesses, unless you are miraculously lucky and competent and good fortune is just on your side. I did not sell. That was the mistake I made. And when I started business, and I knew that I was going to sell, because selling is the only way that revenue would start rolling into the company. And that was the only way that the company could sustain itself, because if there is no revenue, fundamentally the business is not able to function. You have to close down eventually. So that would be the first sub-lesson of the main lesson. The main lesson being sell, the sub-lesson being if there is no selling done, there is no revenue coming in. And when we talk about that, we then think of, hey, what about rejections? Because we talked about the fear of rejections in my first business venture. Well, rejections will be the norm. And if you're not ready for rejections, you're not ready to start a business. Matter of fact, if you're not ready for rejections, you're not even ready to do any form of convincing, because for the most part, we will be rejected, in my experience at least. And so you need to do more selling than you think you do. So if you're going to go for 100 pitches, probably about a 10% or 15% or 20%, if you're lucky, will result in acceptance. And fact being that most of them will be rejections. If you know that rejections are going to take place anyway, then you do what you can to overcome it, which is to increase your chance and statistically to close a deal, which is really to reach out to more leads. And while you're doing so, find different ways to reach out to leads. If you're only using LinkedIn, for example, consider using Facebook, Instagram, X. I was about to say Twitter. Consider even calling the company and directing you to the person in charge that you'd like to speak to. And I also want to talk about a very interesting concept that I learned from my boss, which is that, and that actually is, well, sorry, not my boss, but my ex-boss, right? My first company that I worked in. I think he has actually taught me a lot of things that has made me who I am as the salesperson and business owner that I am. Certainly a lot of lessons that I've learned from him. Anyhow, what he has taught me addresses the point about perfection, or the wanting to be perfect, or the waiting for perfection before you would sell. He said that the best salesperson is able to sell a product and convince the client before the product is even ready. And I think that actually is absolutely true. I'm not too sure if this would apply to a B2C, business to customer context, because for the most part, the sales cycle of a B2C is very short. You get paid immediately, you give out the product immediately. In a B2B, business to business, on the other hand, which is the business that I'm in, or which applies to the business that I'm in, there's usually a duration between when the contract is confirmed and when the project is delivered. And obviously, we don't want to give out unnecessary false promises. But for the most part, we need to ensure that we have concepts of a plan, as Trump would say, when we're selling. And when we have about a 50% confidence, arbitrarily speaking, of being able to deliver the project, we should convince the client that we're able to do it. Because you will have a lot of buffer time, again, between when the project is confirmed and when the project is delivered. And during that buffer time, it is also your responsibility to align and liaise with the client to ensure that the project is delivered in a way that meets the expectations of the clients. And in a B2B project, many a time, the users are not the same individuals or groups as the person who confirms the deal, which technically means that it allows for you to prepare as we near the deadline of project delivery. So the best salesperson truly is the person who's able to convince the client even when the project is not 100% ready. And I think in a B2B context, that is, again, as ordinary as rejections are common. So that really is the lesson. You got to sell, otherwise there's no revenue coming in. And if there's no revenue coming in, you fundamentally are not able to function as a business, which means you close down. On to the second sub-lesson on selling. It is that selling allows you to collect real, raw, valuable, and rewarding data. Because when you sell, you're speaking directly with the customer whom you're targeting, your targeted lead. And when they give you pieces of feedback, you are able to gather data. Their feedback is data. And because they're an actual customer, their feedback, however brief or unclear, or you might think unapplicable, is fundamentally more valuable than any type of data you're able to gather from Googling, administering surveys, and so forth, including actually speaking with clients without selling, which is what I did, trying to infer their pain points. So basically, you start the meeting saying, "Hey, I'm trying to start a business right now. I'd like to get to know your pain points." Now, when you do that, the customers are going to be much more lax. They're not going to be as critical because they're not really in a position to reject you unless they do not even want to be in the call or meeting with you. When you're actually selling and pitching, on the other hand, stakes are high because the client would have to pay, or the client would have to convince their bosses before the confirmation of the deal, which means that they'll be maximally critical and candor, which means also that the data, their feedback, will be maximally valuable. Now, the thing about the delivery of feedback is very interesting because they will fundamentally either provide feedback explicitly, in which case they will actually point out areas of your product or your customer service or your pitching, and let you know why you've done a good job or why they have decided to move on to work on this project with you. Or even when they do reject you, they will say, hey, I'm willing to continue staying in touch with you. Those are explicit pieces of feedback, or cases where they deliver explicit pieces of feedback. And in those cases, you should feel absolutely lucky, because in my experience, most of the time clients deliver feedback very implicitly. So it would just be in the form of good job, I like it. They might even nod and smile. And in those cases, it's our responsibility to then probe and ask questions, ask effective questions, to ensure that we are able to collect as much data as we can. And having collected those data, however helpful or unhelpful they may be, I like to think that we should be humble and consider all data to be helpful from the get-go. We can then go back to the drawing board. Maybe the decision would be to implement some sort of Kaizen, continuous improvement implementation, so that we can continuously improve and change. Or it could be that we should maintain the way that we are delivering our projects and preparing our projects and serving our clients and so forth. Now, when I was starting my first business, like I mentioned, I was speaking with clients, or rather speaking with clients in the form of user interviews. I was asking them what their pain points were. And obviously, the type of data they deliver is not the most honest, the most critical, because there are no stakes for them. They're not going to be very cruel and harsh, which is not going to be helpful for you, because they want to, especially when they're nice people, they're not going to want to offend you, right? Because the fact that they have agreed to the meeting and chat with you suggests that they will be friendly towards you. And it's honestly hard for someone to point out their pain points most honestly, unless the stakes are high, as in the cases with actually having to invest in the product financially. And when I was working in my previous jobs before starting my second business venture, I've also encountered individuals, employees, team members whose mind was warped such that they believe that all data should be scoured and that preparation should be perfect before you begin the process of selling. I was in this one company one time, and the company wanted to actually initiate or actually implement a new program that they would sell to a new demographic of clients. And the team members were really caught up with ensuring that they did the competitor analysis, that they did a lot of Googling, that they administered surveys and so forth before they began the process of selling. And before we knew it, a few months had passed by, and the company had lost a number of resources, and no sale was made, because no sale was even attempted to be made. And I'm not suggesting that competitor analysis and research is not important. They are. But I believe that many times, especially when the project is new and the program is new, the research should be done concurrently with the sales. Because while you're doing your theoretical research, you're also gathering very practical, real data from your actual clients. And really, what's the worst that could happen? You are rejected. But the best that could happen is that you actually are able to sell something. And I think that we have been very lucky, and good fortune has been on our side. Aside from the fact that we are good at what we do, we were able to close a number of deals, and at the same time implement the feedback given by leads that I tried to approach, since I'm mainly in the sales operations of the company. So that's the second sub lesson, actually. When you actually implement the process of selling, you are able to collect real data that's rewarding. Rewarding because people are going to be honest, and they are going to be honest because there is a stake for them. They have to spend the money and convince your stakeholders that they like to collaborate with you. And the third sub lesson on selling is that selling allows you to brand yourself, to brand your brand, and to establish your presence in the industry. And with social media nowadays, the industry is very subjective because it actually refers to the entire online world. When you sell to individual clients, of course, you're making your presence overt to a particular individual or groups. But they are likely, especially if you've done a good job, to also tell others about your brand, which means that one form of marketing has been done for you, word of mouth. Now, when you sell online as well, by building your individual persona on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, YouTube especially, which is actually what I'm trying to do now, you are able to then establish your brand to the global world. Maybe in the beginning, you're establishing your brand to only a very few people, a very specific group of people, your friends, for example, who have been nice enough to subscribe to your channel because they want to make you feel good and they want to spiritually support you. But who knows what's going to happen? It only takes one viral piece of work to it only takes one piece of work to allow you to be viral. We don't know when that will be, but when that does happen, at least you have an archive of sharings that you have online that people can refer to, and that is going to help their needs better understand you. And from there, the chances of the probability, statistically speaking, of being able to sell then increases because more people are paying attention to you. And if you don't sell, on the other hand, then no one's going to know about you. And to encapsulate these three sub lessons, I like to think of the lemonade business analogy. Whenever I feel challenged by any form of tricky circumstances when trying to manage my business, of course, I'm still a very green business owner, I try to think in terms of the lemonade business analogy, which is that if today I want to start a lemonade business selling lemonade, the most important thing is that I sell, because sub lesson number one, if you don't sell, no revenue is coming in, which means that if I don't sell my lemonade, I'm not able to purchase, for example, my sweeteners, my ingredients, my lemons, my stall front and so forth. And honestly, if you're not selling, then you're not running a lemonade business. You're just running it in your mind and you're just doing all the planning. And if I want to find out how I can improve the lemonade I'm selling, then I've got to sell to real clients, which is sub lesson number two, which is that when you sell, you're able to attain real, rewarding, valuable, raw data. The clients are going to say, hey, your lemonade tastes really bad because it's too sweet or it's tasteless. In which case, you then make the necessary changes to make the best cup of lemonade for the clients who have lodged their complaints. On the other hand, if you spend a bunch of time looking at how competitors make their lemonade, and you spend a bunch of time experimenting lemonade on your own, then all the data that you're receiving technically is theoretical. Because if you're going to approach your friends, probably a lot of them are going to say that the lemonade tastes good because there's no stakes. They have no stakes in the situation. But if you say, hey, if the lemon tastes, but if you say, hey, I'd like you to spend $2 purchasing this cup of lemonade, then they're going to be brutally honest. Because if the lemonade tastes bad, then technically they've lost $2. And given that we are more sensitive to we're more sensitive to negative information than positive information, they're going to be very honest. So that is sub lesson number two. And sub lesson number three, if you don't sell, you're not branding. No one's going to know that you have set up this lemonade business and that you are selling lemonade. You're just going to live in your own world, as I've reiterated for many times. On the other hand, if you're selling your lemonade and your lemonade actually is good and your friends like you, they are likely to tell people around them about your cup of lemonade, which is one form of marketing from you, word of mouth. And if you're also posting online about your lemonade stall on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, wherever, about your lemonade, then chances are, we're not sure how high the probability is in the beginning, but more people are going to know. And as we've mentioned, it takes one piece of work to become viral, for your account to become viral. And when you do become viral, then people are able to look back at all the data, all the posts that you have posted. They will approach you, and you are then able to expand your lemonade business. So that really is the most important lesson that I've learned from starting a business: selling. The 3 sub lessons are: if you sell, there will be revenue coming in. If you don't sell, there's no revenue coming in. The second sub lesson would be that selling allows you to collect raw, real, practical, rewarding, valuable data. It allows you to know how to continue to pivot, how to scale, how to improve, whether or not to maintain certain operations and methods of delivery and so forth. And the third sub lesson would be that selling allows you to brand your presence and your brand and yourself. And it only takes one post for your account to be viral. When you become viral and you have an archive of posts on your social media pages, likelihood if people like you, is that they will approach you, and you're then able to scale your business from the online world, which is often zero cost. Now, selling, I believe selling is really the hardest thing to do in the world. And you don't have to be a salesperson to have to sell, because you don't have to be selling a product or a service. You can be selling ideas. If you're in HR, for example, and you want to implement a new system of recruitment and onboarding, you're essentially selling an idea. And for the most part, big companies are not very prone to implement new ideas, because the level of openness would be low, because if something isn't broken, why fix it? And given that most systems tend to fail, they will be very risk averse, and they're not very welcoming to the new. And that is what they should do, honestly, for the most part. Because if they don't do that and they have a bunch of creatives run the company, chances are a lot of projects are not going to run as we expect. And many times, unfortunately, creatives don't spend enough time thinking about how a project will roll out. Well, really, it's not the creative's fault either, but given that most systems fail, that really just how it is, based on the studies of systematics and based on how big companies have been functioning. That is why big companies are not welcoming to new ideas. But if you actually have a good idea and you have done the proposals, you have done the research that you have to, maybe you have surveyed all of your team, you have administered surveys to your team members, maybe you have done the research, maybe you have come up with all of the pros and cons of rolling out this new program, and maybe you have even measured in the ways that you can the feasibility of this new idea in the context of your company. Then you have to sell your idea, which also means that you run a high risk of being rejected. And if we can agree that all of us have to sell regardless of whether or not we're in a sales role, then it's significant that we know that we should sell. Otherwise, nothing is going to be rolled out for us. Another interesting phenomenon about selling that I've noticed is that young people nowadays do not like to sell, or do not like to sell ideas, do not like to take up sales roles, and do not like to be put in a position where they have to convince. Because especially in the case of taking up a sales role, selling reflects in that situation the dynamic between two individuals or two groups. in most cases, especially again, if you're a salesperson, the situation would suggest, or the pitch would suggest, that your social status is lower than the person whom you're trying to convince. Otherwise, why would you be selling to that person? It must be because the person is able to confer on you some benefits in the form of financial rewards or branding that you are selling to that person. And I think I've observed that many young people around me, cross-culturally and even across the different continents, they do not want to sell because it reflects value on them. It makes them feel embarrassed. But I think that selling really is the best thing that you could do, because, like you've mentioned, if selling is the fundamental, it's a fundamental act, if not the fundamental act that you have to carry out across your life, then why shouldn't you practice it? You're depriving yourself of a very valuable skill that's actually transferable across contexts. And I think, of course, I'm biased because I'm in the position of a sales, but in any company, the job of a salesperson often is very difficult, if not the most difficult, because what you have to do really is to convince an external stakeholder to, from their pocket, take out a buck and hand it to another person's hand. You are trying to establish trust while crafting a story of how your product, service, or idea is relevant to the client, and that if the client is not engaged in a deal with you, that they are missing out. It's really an interesting act. I think the act of convincing is really interesting, and sales is really a very specific example of convincing. But anyhow, that is the main lesson that I've learned from starting a business, which is that you sell. Because selling is really the only method and the quickest method by which you can, in the beginning stages of a business, of course, in big companies, marketing will play a role as well, but selling in a new business is the quickest and cheapest way of generating revenue. And without revenue, your business is not able to function. Selling allows you to gather real, valuable, honest pieces of data from actual clients. And selling allows you to establish your brand, not only to individuals, but in the online space as well. And with that, I close up this video. Happy New Year to all the viewers who are watching, and to the ones who are not watching as well. And I will see you in the next video. If you look forward to more videos, and if you feel that you have learned from this particular video, please do subscribe. It would help a lot. Do leave a comment to boost the algorithm, and do share this with your friends as well. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next one.